These are the last words of a man who swore he didn't kill his own son. In 1950, the city of Memphis stood still as Edward Carver, a quiet locomotive engineer, a husband, a father, was sentenced to die in the electric chair. His wife found him holding their child's lifeless body, and the world decided that was enough proof. But before his execution, Edward asked to tell his side of the story, one last time. Would you believe him? Or will you judge him like everyone else did?
My name is Edward Carver, and if you're hearing this, it means they're getting ready to take me to the chair. I was told I could record a few words, my last words, and I don't have much time. So today, I'll tell you what really happened that day. Not what the papers printed, not what the jury believed, and not what my wife saw when she walked into that room. No, today, you'll hear the truth. It was a Sunday morning, cold still. The kind of morning that feels too quiet, like the world is waiting for something terrible to happen. I remember the whistle of a train far away, a sound I once loved. I worked my whole life around those machines. I knew how to make them move, how to make them stop, but I never learned how to stop what happened in my own home. Eli was 10, my only boy. He had my eyes, Margaret's smile. He loved trains, just like his old man. Every Sunday, he'd drag me out of bed before the sun came up so we could watch the locomotives by the river tracks. But that morning, he didn't come. The house was too quiet. I walked to his room, half asleep, thinking he was still dreaming, but he wasn't. He was lying there, still and pale, his little hands cold. I thought he was just sick, that he'd fainted. I called his name once, twice, but he didn't answer. My legs gave out. I fell beside him, held him, begged him to breathe, to open his eyes, and when I saw the blood on his shirt, I knew something was wrong, something terrible. Then the door opened. Margaret stood there, holding a glass of milk that slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. For a moment, she didn't move. Her eyes, I'll never forget them. She looked at me like she was seeing a monster. And maybe, in that moment, I looked like one, holding our boy in my arms. My hands red, the room a mess. She screamed my name, ran outside, called the neighbors, the police. They came fast, too fast. Suddenly, I was surrounded. Questions, shouting, flashbulbs. I tried to explain, but no one listened. I didn't have answers, just pain. I didn't kill my son. I swear to God, I didn't. But when the world decides what it wants to believe, it stops listening to anything else. Margaret never spoke to me again after that morning. Not once, in that silence. That hurt more than the sentence. If this tape ever leaves this room, I want whoever's listening to know the truth. Doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispers. And if you listen close enough, you'll hear it. It's strange how quiet the world becomes when you know your time is running out. The guards don't say much anymore. They just look at me like a man who's already gone. The priest came by this morning, asked if I wanted to pray. I told him I've been praying for 10 years, and if God didn't listen by now, I doubt he'll start today. He smiled, the kind of smile people give when they don't know what else to do. I spent most of the morning staring at the wall. The same crack runs down the paint, like a line that's been there longer than I have. Sometimes I imagine it reaching all the way to my old house in Memphis, to the bedroom where Eli used to keep his wooden trains lined up under the window. He said they protected him at night, that as long as he could hear the sound of a train far away, he'd never be afraid. It's been a long time since I've heard that sound. But in here, when the wind hits the pipes just right, I swear I can almost hear it again, faint, distant, like a ghost, reminding me who I used to be. I keep thinking about Margaret. I wonder if she ever forgave me, even in silence. The last time I saw her was during the trial. She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor the whole time. I remember trying to catch her gaze when they read the verdict, guilty, but she never lifted her head. That hurt more than the sentence itself. Funny thing is, I don't blame her. If I had walked into that room the way she did, if I had seen what she saw, maybe I would have believed it too. Sometimes I ask myself if I would have forgiven me. I don't know. The warden says I'll be taken at sundown. They'll come for me, strap me to that chair, and throw the switch like they've done 100 times before. I thought I'd be afraid, but I'm not. Not anymore. Fear fades after years in a cell. What stays is something else, something heavier. It's not death that scares me. It's the idea that I might die and still not be heard. That's why I'm recording this. Because somewhere out there, maybe someone will listen, really listen, and know that Edward Carver wasn't the monster they said he was. I've made peace with many things, but not with silence. Silence can kill a man long before the chair ever does. So if these are my last hours, I want them filled with truth. Even if no one believes it. Even if it disappears with me. I once told Eli that every man leaves a sound behind like a train echoing long after it's gone. Maybe this recording will be mine. I was born in 1903 in a small town called Clarksville, Tennessee. Back then, the world was slower, or maybe I was. My father worked on the railroads, just like I did later. He was a strict man, quiet but heavy in his ways. He didn't talk much about love, but I could tell it was there. Somewhere beneath the roughness of his hands and the smell of oil that never left his clothes. I remember watching him come home late, his lantern swinging as he walked through the dirt road. I used to wait for that light in the window. It meant he made it home, that the night didn't take him. When you grow up near the tracks, you learn early that not everything or everyone that leaves ever comes back. My mother, Ruth, was gentle. She played the piano at church, sang hymns in the evenings. When the trains passed by, she'd pause, close her eyes, and say, "That's the sound of men chasing something they'll never catch." I never understood it as a boy, but now I think she was right. Maybe that's what life is, a long chase that ends before you know it. We didn't have much. A wooden house with cracks that let the wind in during winter. A small garden where my mother grew onions and corn. And a radio that only worked when you hit it twice. But it was home. Simple, quiet, and full of the kind of peace I never found again. I left school early to work with my father on the rail line. He taught me everything. How to read a gauge. How to listen to the hum of an engine and know when something was wrong. He said a good engineer doesn't just drive the train, he feels it. I carried that with me all my life. It was on those long rides, standing beside him, that I learned the rhythm of time. The sound of wheels against the rails became my heartbeat. I thought the world was endless, miles of steel stretching toward the horizon, promising something better. But life, I learned, doesn't run in straight lines. It bends, it derails. Sometimes it takes you to places you never meant to go. When I met Margaret, I was 27, working the night shifts between Nashville and Memphis. She was waiting at the station with her father, who was a station clerk. She smiled at me once, just once, and I swear I forgot every train number I ever memorized. We married a year later, moved to a small house near the yard so I could hear the trains even when I was home. Margaret said the sound comforted her, that it made her feel I was close, even when I was gone for days. That sound used to mean safety. Now, it only reminds me of everything I lost. Funny how memories work. They fade when you need them most, and return when you wish they'd stay gone. I can still hear my mother singing. I can still see my father's lantern. But I can't remember the last time I held Eli and felt peace. Maybe that's what dying does. It takes the edges off time until all that's left are moments. The ones that made you and the ones that broke you. Before everything fell apart, my life was ordinary, peaceful, even I'd wake before sunrise, drink my coffee by the window, and watch the smoke rise from the yard where the locomotive slept. Margaret would hum softly in the kitchen, and Eli would come running in, barefoot, his hair a mess, asking if I'd take him to see the trains. Our house wasn't much, but it was filled with warmth. There were pictures on the walls. Our wedding, Eli's first steps, a Sunday picnic by the river. The radio played old country songs, and sometimes, when I came home late, I'd hear Margaret singing along while she cooked. That sound, her voice, it made me forget the world outside. Eli was the heart of that house. He'd leave his toys everywhere, his laughter echoing down the hallway. He had a way of turning even silence into something alive. When I came home from long shifts, he'd jump into my arms shouting, "Daddy, The trains missed you. I'd laugh and tell him, no, son, I missed them first. On weekends, we'd walk to the old rail bridge where I first met Margaret. I used to lift Eli up so he could see the tracks stretch into the distance. He'd wave every time a train passed, shouting, "Go faster," like the whole world was his to command. Those were the moments I lived for, the simple ones, the kind that don't ask for much, just love and time. But time, I learned, takes quietly. You don't hear it stealing until there's nothing left. I started working more, taking extra shifts. Margaret said I was tired, distant maybe I was. I thought I was building a better future for her, for Eli. I didn't realize I was building a wall instead. There were nights when she'd wait up for me, dinner cold on the table. She'd ask if I was happy. I'd nod, even when I wasn't sure. She'd ask if I still loved her. I'd say yes, and I meant it, but I don't think she believed me anymore. Eli noticed too. Kids always do. He'd ask why Mom cried sometimes, and I'd tell him it was nothing. That grown-ups just get sad. But I could see the confusion in his eyes. The kind that comes when a child starts realizing that parents aren't as strong as they seem. Still, there were good days. Days when the three of us would laugh again. When the house felt like it used to. I held onto those moments tighter than I should have. Maybe because some part of me already knew they wouldn't last. If I close my eyes now, I can still see that house, bathed in morning light. Margaret by the window. Eli playing with his trains on the floor. That was my world. My reason for everything. And in a single day, it was all gone. That day started like any other. Except it didn't. I woke up late. Something I never did. My head felt heavy, and the air in the house was too still. Margaret had taken Eli to Sunday school, and for the first time in months, I was alone. Maybe that's why I did it. There was a bottle of whiskey sitting on the kitchen counter, a gift from a coworker I never touched. I wasn't much of a drinker, but that morning, something inside me cracked. I told myself it would be just one glass to calm the nerves, to quiet the noise in my head. But one became two, and before I knew it, the sun had shifted and the world felt blurry. When they came back from church, I was sitting on the porch, half-empty glass in hand. Margaret didn't say a word, but her eyes did. Disappointment, the kind that cuts deeper than anger. Eli ran straight to his room, still wearing his church clothes. I wanted to follow him, but I didn't. I just sat there, listening to the ticking clock, wondering when we stopped being a family. Some hours later, I woke to the sound of Eli screaming. It wasn't a dream, it was real. His voice was sharp, desperate. Then I heard something else. Footsteps, fast, heavy, running down the hallway, then fading away. For a second, I thought I was still drunk. But when I stumbled toward his room, the world spun and everything stopped. The door was open. Eli was on the floor, his small body twisted, his shirt stained with blood. My heart stopped. I rushed to him, calling his name, shaking him, begging him to open his eyes. His lips were pale, his chest still. I held him tight, too tight, until I realized my hands were red. Then I heard Margaret behind me. She screamed so loud it shattered the air. The glass she was holding hit the floor, breaking into pieces. "Edward," she said, her voice trembling, her eyes filled with horror. The look on her face told me what no words could. She believed I did it. The neighbors ran in. Someone called the police. The whiskey bottle on the counter, the smell on my breath, the stains on my shirt, it was all the proof they needed. They said I was drunk, that I lost control, that I struck my own son, but I didn't. I swear to God, I didn't. Eli was everything to me. I would have given my life for his. Later, the police found a broken window in the kitchen. The latch was forced from the outside, but nobody cared. They said I staged it to look like a brick, said I panicked and tried to cover it up. Every word they spoke was another nail in my coffin. By the time the sun went down, they had already taken me away. I didn't get to touch Eli again. I didn't get to tell Margaret the truth. I tried, Lord knows I tried, but when the world decides you're a monster, it never listens. Sometimes, I replay that day over and over, trying to hear those footsteps again. Maybe the truth was right there, and I was too broken to see who it really was. The night they arrested me was hot, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin and makes it hard to breathe. The sky was clear, the air heavy. I remember the sound of cicadas outside, screaming louder than I ever could. They didn't even let me change my shirt. I sat in the back of the patrol car, my hands cuffed, Eli's blood still on my sleeves. The smell of whiskey clung to me, and I could feel the eyes of the whole neighborhood watching through the dark. At the station, they put me in a room that smelled of rust and sweat. A single light buzzed above my head, flickering like it was tired of what it saw. The detective walked in holding a thick file, my life condensed into paper and lies. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't ask what happened. He just looked at me and said, "Why'd you do it, Edward?" As if the answer was already written. I told him what I heard Eli's scream, the footsteps, the open window, but he didn't write any of it down. He asked if I'd been drinking. I said yes, but only a little. He smirked, leaned forward, and said, "A little is all it takes, isn't it?" I remember the sound of the fan spinning above me, slow and useless, like time itself had given up. They questioned me for hours, their voices overlapping, until everything blurred together. When I said I didn't kill my son, one of them slammed his hand on the table so hard it shook the light. "Then who did?" he shouted. I didn't know. I still don't. And silence, I learned, is the loudest confession a man can give. The trial came quick, too quick. The newspapers had already printed my guilt before the jury even took their seats. The courtroom was packed, reporters, neighbors, strangers who came just to see the monster from Memphis. Margaret sat in the front row, holding her father's hand. She didn't look at me once, not once. My lawyer tried, but he was too young, too scared. The prosecutor was calm, confident, holding the whiskey bottle up like a sacred artifact. He called me a man consumed by failure, driven by drink, blinded by rage. He said I beat my son in a drunken fury, then tried to hide what I'd done. He said I cried not for my loss, but for my sin. Each word felt like a nail being driven in. Margaret trembled when he spoke. I wanted to stand up, to scream, to tell her the truth, but the guards told me to keep quiet, and I did. No one mentioned the broken window. No one cared about the footprints by the back door, or the fingerprints that didn't match mine. The sheriff said they were smudges. The jury nodded. The truth vanished beneath the heat and the lies. When the verdict came, the room went silent. The judge said guilty, and it felt like the whole world exhaled. I looked for Margaret, but her seat was empty. She'd already gone. I never saw her again. They sentenced me to die in the electric chair. Some said justice was served. Others prayed for my soul. And I sat there, under that heavy summer air, wondering how the truth could die so easily while I was still breathing. They say justice is blind. But that night, I saw her eyes, and she looked right at me, before turning away. Time moves differently in here. Some days stretch forever. Others vanish before you can count them. After a while, you stop keeping track, because counting days means remembering what you've lost. The first years were the hardest. I'd wake up every morning expecting someone to say they made a mistake, that they found the real killer. But all I ever heard was the sound of metal doors and keys clanging in the distance. Hope fades quietly, like a candle burning in a room no one enters. My cell was small, cold in winter, suffocating in summer. The walls were stained with the ghosts of men who came before me, names scratched into the concrete, dates that ended too soon. Sometimes I'd run my fingers over the carvings, wondering if anyone would ever touch mine. They moved me 3 times over the years, said it was for maintenance. But we all knew the truth. They just wanted to keep us from knowing each other too well. Friendships don't last long here. They end the same way everything ends on death row, with silence. I remember one man, Carl Jenkins. He was from Louisiana, convicted for a crime he didn't understand. He used to sing old blues songs through the bars at night. His voice was rough, but soft somehow, like he was trying to soothe the prison itself. One night, the singing stopped. They took him before sunrise. When the lights flickered the next evening, we all knew why. After that, I stopped listening for voices. It hurt too much when they disappeared. I started writing letters to Margaret. Hundreds of them. Most came back unopened. A few didn't. I never knew if she read them or just threw them away. I told her about Eli, about the dreams where I still saw him running down the hallway, laughing. I told her I forgave her even if she never forgave me. Years turned into decades. My hair went gray. My hands shook when I tried to write. They stopped calling me Edward and started calling me Old Man. The guards changed, the wardens changed, even the prison changed, but my story never did. Sometimes they let me outside for an hour. I'd stand in the yard and look at the sky through the wires. Same sun, same clouds, same blue, but it all felt borrowed. The air out there tasted like freedom, but it was never mine. I've seen men lose their minds in here. I've seen men find God, and others curse him until their last breath. I've seen the chair take more souls than I can count, and every time, I wonder if they felt the same thing. I feel that somewhere, somehow, the truth is still waiting to be heard. People think death row is about waiting to die. It's not. It's about waiting to be believed. People think prison is the worst kind of punishment. They're wrong. The real punishment is the silence that comes from the people you loved. For years, I waited for a letter from Margaret Giswan. I told myself she was hurting too much to write, that she needed time, that one day she'd forgive me. But forgiveness never came, not even a word. It's strange how a woman's silence can echo louder than any cell door. I heard from a guard that she moved away a few years after my conviction. Sold the house, left Memphis. Some said she went to live with her sister in Arkansas. Others said she remarried. I don't know what's true, and maybe I don't want to. The Margaret I knew died the same day Eli did. What lived on after that was just the shadow of her grief. In the early years, I used to dream about them. Margaret standing at the kitchen window, Eli running through the yard, sunlight touching their faces. I'd wake up reaching for them, only to feel cold concrete under my hand. Over time, the dreams stopped visiting. Maybe they got tired of coming to a place like this. Sometimes I wonder if Margaret ever looked back, if she ever doubted what they told her, if she ever thought, even for a second, that maybe I was telling the truth. A priest once told me that holding on to love can be a kind of suffering. I think he was right. There were nights when I hated her, hated the way she believed the world instead of me. But even in hate, there was love. I think that's what broke me the most. I never blamed her for leaving. How could I? She lost a son, our son, and in her eyes, I was the one who took him. What could she hold on to after that? Sometimes, the guards would bring me newspapers. I'd stare at the pages, looking for her name, for anything. I'd imagine her older, her hair silver like mine, maybe walking past the same church where we once stood to be married. I wonder if she still prays, and if she does, I wonder if she prays for me or against me. I've had a lot of time to think about what family really means. It's not just blood, it's belief. And once that belief is gone, all that's left is memory, and memory fades. But Eli, I still see him. Every time I close my eyes, he's there, barefoot, laughing, running toward me like he used to. And for a moment, I almost believe I'm home again. I used to believe justice had a heart, that if you spoke the truth loud enough, someone would hear it, that the system was built to protect men like me, the innocent, the hardworking, the forgotten. I don't believe that anymore. Justice is not blind. She just looks away when the truth is inconvenient. And when she does, good men disappear quietly, one by one, buried under the weight of other people's mistakes. I've seen guilty men walk free, their names washed clean by money and charm. I've seen innocent men die with their dignity stripped away. The law doesn't care about truth, it cares about order. And in this world, sometimes it's easier to kill a man than to admit the system was wrong. Every day, I heard the same words echo through the prison walls. Justice served, but justice doesn't live here. She left a long time ago. They say time heals all wounds. That's not true. Time doesn't heal. It teaches you how to live with pain until it becomes part of who you are. The pain of being called a murderer, of being looked at like a monster, of knowing that your name will die with a lie. That's a wound that never closes. There were nights when I'd stare at the cracks in the ceiling and ask God why he let it happen. I never got an answer. Maybe he was as tired of listening as I was of praying, or maybe he wanted me to understand something, that truth doesn't always win, not in this world. What hurts most isn't the sentence. It's knowing that somewhere out there, life went on without me. The trains still run, people still laugh, children still play, and yet, my story was sealed in this place like a ghost, trapped between walls. Some guards say I'm bitter. Maybe I am, but bitterness is all that's left when truth is ignored. It eats you from the inside, like rust on steel, slow, quiet, inevitable. I've stopped asking for freedom. I stopped asking for forgiveness, too. What I want now is something smaller. I want someone to remember that I existed, that I was more than the papers, the verdict, the lie, that I was a father, a husband, a man who loved and was destroyed for it. If justice ever had a voice, I hope she's listening now. Because these walls have heard my truth 1,000 times. And still, they remain silent. They say the night before your death is the longest of your life. Maybe they're right, or maybe it just feels that way when the silence starts to sound like time itself. They moved me to the holding cell this afternoon. The walls here are cleaner, brighter, like they're trying to make death look respectable. There's a small window near the ceiling, but it doesn't show the moon, just the faint, trembling light of a street lamp outside. The air smells like bleach and dust. Cold. Final. The guards don't talk much tonight. One of them, Harris, came in about an hour ago. He placed a small camera on the table and said, "When the red light comes on, you can start." He didn't look me in the eyes. None of them ever do. I nodded, thanked him. It's strange how manners stay alive even when you're about to die. When the red light blinked, I just stared at it for a long time. There it was, a single eye, unblinking, waiting for me to speak. I could see my reflection in the lens, faint and ghost-like. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. How do you start speaking when you know it's the last time anyone will ever hear your voice? They gave me my last meal earlier, cornbread, black coffee, and a small apple. I didn't finish it. I wasn't hungry. Hunger stopped meaning something a long time ago. Outside, I can hear the hum of the generator, the one that powers the chair. It's a sound that fills the halls like thunder trying to whisper. You can feel it in your bones. It's the sound of something that doesn't forgive. Every sound tonight feels louder. The footsteps down the corridor, the keys turning, the guard's whispers outside the door. They told me it will happen just after midnight. Procedure, they call it, like death needs a schedule. The camera's still rolling. The red light steady. It watches me the way the world once did, curious, distant, ready to judge. I've been thinking about what I'll say when they ask for my last words. But maybe I don't need to wait until the chair. Maybe I'll say them right here, to this lens, to whoever's watching after I'm gone. Because this is the only truth I have left. I'm not afraid anymore. Fear died long before I did. What's left is peace. Fragile, but real. Still, I hope there's something after this. Something beyond the wires and the noise. If there is, maybe I'll find Eli there, running through the fields, laughing the way he used to. And maybe this time, I'll be the one waiting for him. The red light is still on. That means I still have time. And for a man like me, time, even a few more minutes, means everything. The red light is still on. This camera, it's been watching me for a long time. Maybe it's the only thing that ever truly listened. If anyone ever watches this, if anyone cares enough to look past the lies, I want you to know the truth. I didn't kill my son, but I know who did. It took me years to say this out loud. I spent half my life replaying that morning, trying to make sense of it. For years, I told myself it had to be a stranger. But deep down, I always knew it wasn't. It was someone I knew. Someone I trusted. His name was Harold Jennings. We worked together on the rail yard for nearly 10 years. I trained him myself, taught him how to handle the engines, how to listen to the steel. I thought he was a good man. I was wrong. Harold started stealing from the company. Small parts, fuel, tools. I warned him to stop. When he didn't, I reported it to our supervisor. A week later, he was fired. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. He came to my house that night, drunk, furious, saying I'd ruined his life. I told him he did that himself. He said, "Then I'll take from you what you took from me." I didn't understand what he meant, not then. The next morning, when I heard Eli scream, I also heard footsteps, heavy, fast, running down the hallway and out the back door. When I stumbled outside later, I saw something moving across the yard, a man running toward the trees near the tracks. The sun was rising, hitting his back. His shirt was torn, and his hair, that thick rust-colored hair, caught the light. I knew that color. I'd seen it every day at the yard. It was Harold. He'd kept his promise. He took the one thing I loved more than anything, my boy. I've lived every second of my life since that morning, knowing I was right, and knowing no one would believe me. When I told the police about Harold, they said no such man existed in their records. But of course, he didn't. Harold had left the state the night before they arrested me, changed his name, vanished. I heard rumors, years later, that he'd been caught stealing again in Oklahoma, but by then, no one cared to listen. The prosecutor said I made him up, said I was trying to shift the blame. But how do you explain recognizing a man's back from 50 yards away? How do you forget the sound of his boots on the floor you built with your own hands? I've carried this truth like a stone in my chest. It's the only thing heavier than guilt, being innocent and knowing the world will never believe you. If anyone ever finds this tape, if anyone still believes in truth, look for Harold Jennings. There's a file at the Memphis yard. 1949, missing inventory reports, signed by him. His signature is still there. That's all the proof I ever had, and no one ever cared to see it. But maybe now, someone will. If Margaret ever sees this, I want her to know that I never stopped loving her, that I forgave her the moment she turned away. She lost everything that day too, and she didn't even know who really took it from her. And Eli's son, if you can hear me, I'm coming home. I'm so sorry I wasn't fast enough. My name is Edward Carver, from Memphis, Tennessee. I was condemned for a crime I did not commit. I was a father, a husband, and a man who loved more than the world allowed. And these were my last words.
Months after Edward Carver's execution, something unexpected happened. A new warden ordered the old prison archives to be cleaned, and inside a box of forgotten files, they found what no one had ever cared to look for: the reports from the Memphis rail yard, missing equipment, forged signatures, all of them signed by one man, Harold Jennings. The discovery led to a quiet but official reopening of the case. Investigators followed the trail and confirmed that Harold had changed his name, fled the state, and years later was arrested in Oklahoma for assault and theft under a new identity. After days of questioning, Harold Jennings confessed. He admitted everything: the break-in, the fight, the crime that took the life of Eli Carver. He said Edward tried to protect his son and walked into the room too late. The truth was finally known. Edward Carver had been innocent all along, but by the time justice opened her eyes, it was too late. Edward was gone. His wife had passed, and the world had already moved on. Still, his voice, those words recorded by the red light of that camera, survived. Not as a confession of guilt, but as proof of a truth that refused to die. If you're watching this now, don't let his story fade again. Like this video. Leave a comment. What would you do if no one believed your truth? And subscribe to Last Words Me, because some stories deserve to be heard, even when it's already too late. These were the last words of Edward Carver.